This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. All right, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I gave a little hint in my story about who I was going to be recording with my Eagles jersey, and no surprise, we are here today with Lane Johnson. Lane, welcome to the Resilient Life.
Thanks for having me on. Good Friday.
Yeah. We were talking about what this kind of like signifies. And, if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, the name Lane Johnson is not foreign to you. And Philadelphia Eagles All-Pro, Pro Bowl just announced again. Is this your fifth time Pro Bowl selection? Super Bowl champion captain, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, which we're going to talk more about. And then Sean behind the camera here, as we were talking about you, Lane, Sean said, and a no-brainer Hall of Famer. So that'll probably be to come. But more than that, what I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into today is, Lane, your journey to playing football for the Philadelphia Eagles since 2013, what that's meant to you, some of the trials and tribulations you've gone through as a professional football player, and then your broader connection with the Travis Manion Foundation. And so I think kind of kicking it off with just sharing how we became connected. I was reached out by your team, and you were looking to and already meeting with Gold Star families. And your team had asked if the Travis Manion Foundation could help connect you with Gold Star families as you went into the later stretch of the year at all of your away games. And so we've been doing that. I know you've met with some terrific families that I've had the privilege of knowing over the years at the Travis Manion Foundation, but I'd love to kind of start there and ask you why you do that, why you chose to, spend the night before a big game meeting with Gold Star families across the country.
Yeah, so initially, I hired my trainer, Gabe Rangel, who's an ex-Marine back in 2018. So this is something that he did in his former position. He had the opportunity to be at big music events and bring Gold Star families in. But, just growing up, my dad was always big, with helping veterans. My grandpa was in World War II, in Vietnam. So I just felt like I always had a special place in my heart just because of the sacrifice and just the amount of stuff that they had to overcome and deal with. And so I always envied that. And doing, I think, really for the away purposes, because I feel like we have a pretty good fan base in Philly until we met y'all. And this was already going on. And then we heard about Travis and his story and how he was, loved his fellow Philadelphians. And really, I think having these families in, you get to hear their stories. And then really, from most of their point of views, your foundation has provided the most help. And so, like, as far as them overcoming tragedy and having to move on with life and how to deal with that and how it affects everybody. And so I feel like a lot of growth has been done by these people, a lot of relief and healing. And so, I think that's really what it's all about. And that's what I've learned, with meeting these families.
What has it meant to you hearing their stories, the night before you're walking into a big game? And I have to imagine it puts things into perspective for you.
Yes.
I connected you with, I know personally all of the families that you've met with at the away games. But one in particular is Veronica Ortiz. And so I'm very close with Veronica. And when you had asked to find a family before the Cowboys game, I thought of her immediately because, as you know, and I'm sure when she shared the story with you, her late husband was a diehard Cowboys fan. And I actually said to Brian, I said, I've got a great family to meet before the Cowboys game, but this woman is a diehard Cowboys fan. And you know, I the rivalry, all of that. And I loved, she put up a post after she met with you, and she's wearing your jersey, and it's you and her and her new husband and Gabe. And she said, my fellow Dallas Cowboy fans, you know, before you say anything about me in an Eagles jersey, let me explain why I'm wearing it. And she shared the story of how much it meant for you to meet with her. And what I loved is she said at the end, you know, the one thing Lane said to me before we left was go out and cheer as hard as you can for your Cowboys. And I thought that was so cool that you said that to her, how much that meant to her. So, you know, I'd love to kind of gain from you what hearing their stories does for you.
Yeah, I think I like how she stood her ground. She didn't budge, being a fan. But yeah, I think meeting with them like the night before the game, it just allows me to get outside my world and so like intrinsically focused. And then you hear, you know, things about, you know, their situation in real life and, you know, puts things into perspective. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all entertainers of what we're doing, but yeah, I mean, there's a human side to it. So yeah, I mean, that's really been kind of the message with all of them. You know, they love their, you know, they love their loved ones. They realize they, you know, died doing what they loved and what they were living to do. So yeah, it's just been really, I guess, refreshing just to have that. And like I said, you know, you get so wrapped up in the season and doing your routine, and it's so refreshing to get outside yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk a little bit because again, one of the things that we've talked about is the connection between mental health and, you know, some of the things you've gone through, and then the mental health that epidemic that's happening within the military community. And, you know, for those that don't know, you know, Lane's been challenged with some you know, mental health issues over the course of his professional career. And you were very open about coming out and sharing your story. And I shared with you when we were down at the NovaCare complex, this idea of how impactful it is for you to destigmatize mental health, especially in professional sports. And that's an important thing that we're trying to overcome within the military community for our veterans as well. Can you walk us through a little bit how that started, kind of the place you were in, and then what gave you why you decided to actually speak out and share and not kind of keep your challenges to yourself?
Yeah, so I always had, you know, performance anxiety. I think I just remember it beginning when I was in junior college because I knew I had 1 year to have an impactful season to try to get where I'm going, Division 1. And so it started there. I just remember the symptoms. Feel like my ability to focus was kind of taken captive. You know, affected my appetite, my weight, and just really was a cycle for me. You know, even after getting drafted, you know, you think that personal achievements or all that will kind of take care of it, but if I could just amplify it. So for me, you know, when I had my injury in 2019, I had the surgery on my ankle in 2020. When I was coming back 2020, 21, my, you know, my ankle didn't feel well. And I remember in training camp being like, this might be my last season. And I told my mom before like the first game, I was like, you know, that I wasn't in a good space. And so, yeah, after I missed those games and came back, finished the season. My ankle was still going through it, but I felt like what helped me was, like I said, put everything into perspective. But I feel like I owed my teammates to get back there because, everybody's counting on one another on a football field. And like for us, for a perfect play to work, it takes everybody doing their job. Somebody missing their assignment or going to the wrong person. It all happened so fast. So I feel like I owed it to them. And yeah, so after I missed those games, instead of making up some excuses to, they were just saying personal matters. I felt like it could help a lot of players that were in similar situations. And so I felt like it created a lot of good dialogue. And like you said, it's so crazy that, we don't learn about psychology, really, unless you're choosing that as a major in college. You don't really learn about it in school. It's not talked about, you know, which is probably the number one thing you need to get a hold of for your life to be put on a good direction. And so, yeah, it's just created a lot of good dialogue. And so I talked to a lot of players. I talked to a lot of people. And I think the way to do it is in a personal, intimate, not out in the front, in front of a whole lot of people. And so, yeah, you can turn people's life around pretty quickly. And so,
So
yeah.
so you missed how many games? 2 or 3? 3. What was the deciding factor? Because I have to imagine, obviously, during the season, for you to say, I need to take a step back, you're missing 3 games in the season. Was there a pivotal moment where you had to make that decision, where you were like, I can't do it anymore, this is too much?
Yeah, it started in training camp. It was just, so I had the surgery in 2020. I played 7 games and then I retore my ankle again, the tightrope, and I had to get deltoid surgery. So my foot felt like a piece of wood and I didn't have flexibility in it. I couldn't push off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for ordinary person, that's fine. You can rehab it. But for me, my body is everything for what I'm doing. And I felt like it impacted my run game. And so from the outside, everything might look good to the average person, but me being critical of myself, knowing that my foot was stopping my ability to make plays that I'm normally able to make, I'm at a crossroads to where, do I want to be stopped at kind of my peak instead of playing and being less than what I fully, so all that came into conclusion. And yeah, the biggest thing was to finish the season. I owed it to my teammates. We ended up making the playoffs that year, but really it was just a big momentum switch, for me personally. And then, as that season, it was kind of similar season. We started off rough, and then at the end, we ended up making a comeback. So, yeah, it was a really big moment for me. I wanted to, like I said, I really didn't want to disclose it, but after 3 weeks, I feel like people already knew. So if I was to go up there and lie, it wouldn't have been any better. So
Yeah.
after all that, it's been able to help a lot of people. So I'm here with their disclosure.
I can so relate to that. I talk a lot about I was diagnosed with PTSD not after my brother was killed, but it was actually 5 years later after my mom died of cancer. And I think that I had pushed away for 5 years, after Travis was killed in Iraq, I just kept going. I did anything I could to keep busy and I didn't focus on myself. I thought I was focusing on myself by keeping busy, but I really pushed away kind of dealing with that loss. And it was after my mom died that kind of everything just hit me. And it was just like, oh my gosh, in 5 years, I lost my brother and my mom. And it was just like my nuclear family of 4. It was now just my dad and I. And I went through some debilitating anxiety where for a long time, I didn't even want to leave my house. I would wake up every morning, like crippled by just anxiety that I could not push away. And I started seeing a therapist, which I told no one about because even that I was kind of ashamed of. I didn't want to admit that I needed that help. And a few months into therapy, and I've shared this story before, the therapist said, I'm ready to kind of give you an official diagnosis. And I'm like, I wasn't coming to you for a diagnosis. I was just looking to, coming and talking to you was making me feel better. Lo and behold, she diagnosed me with PTS. And I left that appointment really pissed off. I wasn't like, oh, finally, I get it. This is why. I was like, how can I be diagnosed with that? I almost didn't feel worthy of that diagnosis because it's so synonymous with those men and women who are in combat and they come back. And I was like, I shouldn't be diagnosed with PTS. But I realized I had suffered some really traumatic times. And I went for probably about a year without sharing, other than, very close family and friends, that I had been diagnosed with PTS. And it was at a summit for the Travis Manion Foundation in San Diego with a bunch of veterans. And I was speaking, and it wasn't part of the plan, but I just shared with them like, hey, 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with PTS. And even my coworkers who were in the room, like, they had no idea. And I felt such a rush of just emotion that, and like, I felt relieved that I was able to kind of share my story, and I didn't feel like I was hiding something from the world.
Yes, because that story that's been hidden for so long, once it's brought to light, and then it is. It's a huge emotional release, and you feel you can approach everything a little bit differently. And so, like I said, it's all about getting educated on it. It's all weird. It's unusual to kind of dive into this sort of area. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of healing. There's a lot of good things being done, and you're a lot more aware, I guess, moving forward. And so,
yeah, it's good stuff. And I think about, one of the other things we touched on when we were over at the NovaCare complex, I brought one of my friends, Joey Fay. He was a football player at the Naval Academy. He's still a Marine reservist, lives, diehard Eagles fan. So when I told him I was going to film with you, he was like, I'm in. He came down with me, and I loved what he was saying to you. Like, we're the alphas, right? We're not supposed to have to deal with stuff like that, mental stuff. And, when you think about the things that you say you're entertainers, but as professional athletes, you go through a lot of the same transition pieces that our military veterans go through as well. So, you think about, like, I've seen we had an NFL player, Kurt Maggot, who ran the Marine Corps Marathon with us this year, retired NFL player. And Kurt was sharing how when he left the NFL a couple years ago, he was completely lost. And he ended up joining our marathon team. And I think about that kind of transition for professional athletes who all of a sudden you guys kind of lose your identity and your purpose, right? It's like you're talking about the anxiety you were dealing with in junior college, right? And so your entire life has been leading up to where you are right now as an NFL player. And at some point, that's going to end for you. You're no longer going to be an NFL player. You're going to be a former NFL player. And so I think, like, preparing for that is super important. Just as we talk about with our military veterans, like, they need to prepare for that transition. When they take off that uniform and you guys take off that uniform, like, that world goes away to some degree. And you have to find something else to feel purposeful for, and something else that makes you want to wake up every day and, get after it. Do you think about that at all?
Yeah, your identity, or who you are, isn't what you do. So although, yeah, it's been a dream you've been chasing since you've been a childhood, you also have to deal with the reality of it is that everybody has a transition period. And if you can adapt and really kind of know your purpose, as things are unfolding, and know what you want to put your time into and be passionate about. So yeah, forming another identity. It's like a man. It's like a man of many coats. You know, you have to be able to, once that part of your life is done, make that transition. And so, but I think like what you're saying is that a few people really plan that out and kind of just live, living their dream, and then they put all their eggs in that basket. And then, like you said, when it's done, they don't feel fulfilled. They don't feel the same type of rush that they had from their job or playing football. So, and they're always seeking it. So it seems like they're always chasing. And so, like you said, you feel like your team's not there anymore. So now your purpose is kind of, what am I doing?
Yeah. I was reading an article that it was right. I guess it was right after you guys had beat San Fran last year, right before the Super Bowl. And you were kind of talking about your journey. And there was something that stuck out and I loved it. You were talking about your mom. And when you had been injured and you were really struggling, you said that your mom used tough love with you. And I read that line and you didn't respond well to it, I would say. Like you were kind of like, pushed it away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can relate so much because, my dad's a retired Marine Corps colonel. So he operated with tough love. And so when I read that line about your mom, and I think like you said in the article, you kind of said like you came around to like, you kind of understood what she was doing. And, I've come to a place where I can now appreciate my dad's tough love. And so when you think about that and you think about that journey, like, what do you think about this idea of how you approach someone who's struggling? Like, is it with a tough love approach? Do you have to kind of know the person and feel the person for how you're going to react to get them where they need to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely dependent on each person, but I felt like my mom kind of learned that from her dad. It was kind of passed down, but the premise behind it is that something maybe a little bit shortcoming, just emotionally and how you feel with it, but the benefits are going to be in the end. So a lot of time a parent doesn't want to help their child too much, so they have the ability to fight and adapt and really find their place in this world. So like I said, sometimes they feel like if you give too much, you do more harm than good. But yeah, as far as the mental health, it definitely goes down to a person. But if somebody is caught in a cycle or repetitive, I guess, set of habits, and they keep going in the same place, then yeah, I think tough love should be applied.
Yeah, it's this idea that, I always say, like, you want to be there for someone, right? But you also don't want to enable someone to stay in the place that they're in, right? And it's like, how do you get that person to want to better themselves? And sometimes it is a little bit of mix of compassion and tough love. And so, but I could relate so much.
Motivator.
Yeah, I love it. And and another thing that I absolutely loved is this was a tweet that you put out on September 4th of this year. And you were talking about Brandon Brooks. And you said, Brandon Brooks is the one who gave me the courage to open up about mental health. We have so much in common. Raised by a single mom, obsessed with sports, perfectionist, 5:30 a.m. throw up sessions, and fighting demons. Find your Brandon. So I read that. And my dad wrote a book called Brothers Forever. The book is about Travis and Travis's best friend, Brendan Looney. Travis and Brendan were roommates at the Naval Academy, and Travis went into the Marine Corps. Brendan went on to become a Navy SEAL, and they always were pushing themselves to be the best versions of themselves. Travis was killed in 2007. Brendan was the person that was there for us in a huge way after Travis was killed. 3 years after Travis was killed, Brendan was killed in Afghanistan. And so Travis and Brendan are buried next to each other in Arlington National Cemetery. And my dad shared a story in his book about, it was actually a bike riding thing that they were doing through Annapolis. And long story short, big competition. And my dad ended it with, find your Brendan. And I saw that tweet about find your Brandon. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's like, find that person, right? Find that person that pushes you to do more. And so it seemed like for Brandon Books, he was the one that pushed you to kind of share your story and be vulnerable and be out there. And so I loved that connection with find your Brandon and find your Brendan.
Yeah, I just I felt like we were very similar, like you said, on a lot of levels. It's like our nervous system was wired the same. We were constantly anxious and stressed. We were really good at our jobs, but it took an awful price on us. And so, yeah, his stuff, I believe, was like in 2018. But I mean, everything he was dealing with, I was dealing with too, and mine just came a little bit later. But um, I feel like he might have been ridiculed a lot more than what I was because, like I said, the timing, even 4 or 5 years ago, we weren't where we were today. As far as in sports and people being vocal about it. But yeah, I think his story just resonated with me because I felt like we were very similar. We played next to each other, we relied on each other, but we were feeling just mutually the same, terror just because we were perfectionists. We demanded that we played at a certain level and we put that stress on us. So, yeah, it's hard, for many people to can say they've had that relationship where they're out there in front of everybody and having to really truly trust one another. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely a big part of my career.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I have to talk a little bit about the Eagles as a diehard Eagles fan. And, one of the things that I was thinking was the contrast with you. So Super Bowl wins versus Super Bowl loss, right? I was right here in my basement, right in the other room with 100 people when you guys won the Super Bowl. You can't see it, but I've got the cover of the Philadelphia Inquirer on the wall right here, along with a Super Bowl champion plaque above it. Like, that moment was everything, obviously, for not just the Eagles, but the city of Philadelphia. We were down at the parade. We rode the high all the way through. It was incredible. And last year, I did the same thing. I was like, I got to replicate it. Oh, we also opened a bottle of Dom Perignon from like 1995 that night after we'd been holding on to it. We're like, when the right occasion comes. And it was like, that was the occasion. But then last year I did the same thing. I was like, we're going all out. I had a sheet cake this big, ready to go, big party. And the Eagles lost. And I actually put a post up that night. I was sitting at my kitchen counter. Everybody had left. I was eating the cake from the box, and I could hear my 8-year-old son upstairs crying because he literally went upstairs crying in his bedroom. And I was like, wow, a tale of two cities, from that win and that loss. And here I am, I'm just the middle-aged woman in Philadelphia that is part of this bigger community of fans. But I'd love to know what that felt like for you, because obviously you're on that field. And what is that juxtaposition between the high of the win and then that low of a loss? And how do you process those two things?
Yeah, the win, definitely what you're looking for. But, even after the win, I realized I was back at work like nothing happened about 2 months after that. So after that experience, it really put in perspective to me just how fast the years come and go. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a painful loss just because it was such a close game. It came down the wire. But yeah, I think my appreciation for it, as I've gotten older, has increased. So yeah, I mean, for me, I just kind of, even now, you get to this point in the season after all these games, preseason games, training camp, I get numb to really the emotions, like even at the playoffs, the Super Bowl. I'm just out there. It's such a long season. I'm in robot mode. I've been doing walkthroughs for half the year, every day, play after play. So it's just me, just another game. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we have an opportunity to get there again. But like I said, it is special, and it's so hard to get there. But you just appreciate the guys that you're with along the way.
Yeah, and I'd have to imagine that, especially, you've been with the Eagles for is this your 11th season with the Eagles? Yeah. And so I would imagine that last year, you played probably a pretty significant leadership role for some of the younger guys, that walked into that game and, just again, it's any given Sunday, but that's the game, right? And so that loss, for you, you probably know how to handle it a little differently than some of the younger guys in the NFL on the team. And so I would imagine that you were kind of a voice of levity after that loss for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even cracked a few jokes. I think the first thing I said, well, better luck next year.
Yeah. Well, and I loved the Kelsey documentary, and just shows him back in the hotel room reading books to his kids,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, Uncle Travie won," and he's like, "Yep, Uncle Travie won," and it's just like, yeah, that's real life. Guess what? Jason Kelsey went back to the hotel room and put his kids to bed, read him books, and as they told him that he lost the game. And so I think, thinking about it from that perspective, but I also think a lot about that brotherhood too, especially with you and Jason Kelsey. And I loved when it was announced that you were the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Eagles, the video with Jason, and, him talking about, he's getting super emotional talking about like why this award is being given to you from the Eagles, or this nomination. And automatically I thought about like that brotherhood that probably exists between the two of you and what that means. And can you talk about that a little bit? Just like the brotherhood with your teammates, and, again, with Jason itself.
Yeah, we've been in a lot of battles together, and it's one of these battles where you're highly criticized, scrutinized, having court meetings in your locker room after every game. The pressure's no bigger here at this place. So being able to deal with that for all these years with him, we just realized what a fighter he is, and how much he loves the game, and how much he loves his guys. So just few guys, is passionate about what they're doing is him. But yeah, just his speech, like anytime he has to give a speech like that to the team, he tends to get emotional. But that's just him. I mean, he wears his emotions on his sleeve. But yeah, man, I really, that is my brother. I grew up an only child, and yeah, man, we spent a lot of times in there, mostly laughing. When it's time to get serious, we get serious. But just been a great battle buddy, man. A great somebody you can rely on, somebody who's tough. I mean, he's got all those qualities that you want out of a leader. And one thing about it, he works his tail off. I think that's a great thing for us building cultures. When these new guys come in, they see these guys in their 13th, 14th season, whatever they are, and how hard they work. It sets a great initiative for what they need to be doing.
Yeah, I love that. And you can really feel that brotherhood that exists with you guys. It's something that I love so much about the team. All right, so let's talk about the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. You are the nominee for Philadelphia, for the Philadelphia Eagles. Super exciting. And if you don't know, each nominee gets to pick a charity. Lane announced just last month that the Travis Manion Foundation was his charity of choice for the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. What that means is a few things. One of them being a charity challenge, which is happening right now. The voting ends on Monday. So I think currently you're in second place, Lane. And yeah, we're trying to get you into first. Voting ends on Monday. And what that means is just you got to vote. And in true NFL fashion, you can vote more than once. I like to sit on my phone and just vote and vote and vote. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. But tell me a little bit about why you chose the Travis Manion Foundation and what it would mean. So that's the charity challenge piece that ends Monday, and what it would mean to you to have to win that charity challenge for the Travis Manion Foundation?
Yeah, it'd be awesome. I just think, the Travis Manion Foundation obviously aligns with what our views were, and then the Gold Star families. And then I feel like it really resonated with Gabe since he was a Marine. And yeah, I mean, I felt like it went hand in hand, and it's all about us supporting people and helping people. And so I feel like that's what your vision is. That's what mine is. And yeah, the race is on. We don't have much time left for voting. So get to voting. You're changing a lot of lives. You're impacting a lot of people. And, in the end, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, we could not appreciate your support anymore for bringing broader awareness to the Travis Manning Foundation. And I just want to say personally to you, the Philadelphia Eagles, the entire organization, like it's a part of my family. My dad has been a season ticket holder since I was young. Growing up in a military family, I lived all over the country. I was born in North Carolina. I lived in California and Washington, D.C., all over. But guess one thing rang true. We were always Philadelphia Eagles fans. And my dad we may have been living in North Carolina. My dad still had season tickets at Veterans Stadium. He was passing them out to his family and friends when we weren't in the area. But when we came back here, when he left active duty, and we settled back into the Philadelphia area, my brother was never missing a game. And so, I remember being at the last game at Veterans Stadium with my brother. It was the NFC Championship game that we should have won, and we didn't. And I watched hundreds of grown men crying as I walked out of that stadium. But the memories I had sharing that game with my brother were everything. And, moving into the link, just the times that we spent there are so meaningful and mean so much. And, the last thing my brother did just a few days before he left for his second deployment to Iraq was going to a Philadelphia Eagles game. He flew home from California to go to an Eagles game. And I've shared the story with you about, as he was leaving that game, and my husband, Dave, jokingly turned to him and told him he was going to push him down the stairs so he wouldn't have to go back to Iraq. And, Travis got real serious and said, if I don't go back to Iraq, someone else much less prepared is going to go in my place. If not me, then who? And every time I walk up the stairs into a game, I think about my brother saying that. And I know the exact staircase in the link where he spoke those words. And so I try to enter and exit from that stairwell each time. But I think about how an organization and how a team can mean so much to someone. And so when you say like, we're just entertainers, no, like you're entertainers that are playing a bigger role in society, right? So you have these Marines that are going to fight in foreign lands across the world. And what's most important to them is watching your team play, and that's what it was for my brother. And I think about now those same season tickets that my brother sat in, my 9-year-old son named after him is sitting in them at every game. So, that heritage continues generationally. And I want to give gratitude to you and the entire Eagles organization for being a part of our world and our family for so many years, and need you to know how special it is. And I'm sure you hear it from fans all the time. And there are no fans like Philly fans. We are die hard. And you see it every day, I'm sure, but it means so much to so many across this country. And so I want to thank you for that. And thank you for helping to build that relationship with the Eagles even closer in helping to highlight us in the work that we do.
Yeah, well, you really don't realize how much of an impact this game has on people and the community. I remember the Super Bowl in 2018, the parade that people were dumping ashes on Broad Street. I'm like, well, it's pretty serious around here. But I got to sense that growing up in Texas, I realized how big football was really across the state, and how much people look forward to it, and how much it brought people together, and how much just people enjoy the game. So, you know, there's not a place like Philly, and you just see it in our fans and how passionate they are, and it is what it is. I mean, people love this game. So, yeah, it's been awesome to team up, and it's really been a big year in 2023, and hopefully a better one in 2024. So, this is just the beginning.
I love it. And like they say, Philly fans, you either love us or you hate us, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
No in between.
And most of the people outside of Philly hate us, but that's okay. Nobody likes us. We don't care. Lane, I want to finish with the final question I asked everybody on the Resilient Life podcast. And that is, what does living a resilient life look like for you?
It's the ability to adapt and overcome obstacles, whatever's in your path, to have a vision, to have a goal, and to aim for it, and don't let anything get in your way. Life isn't easy. It's going to have a lot of challenges. They're going to test you, and you know, in the end, you're going to be able to look back and be proud to be able to overcome it and become a stronger person.
I love it. Lane, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Get out there and vote. Voting ends on Monday. We'll be watching you this weekend. Thanks for all you do.
Yep. Thank you. And yeah, get a win this week, beat the Giants.
Yep, that's right.